Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Granosky. So glad to be with you here across Radioland. Wherever you find us, make sure you save it at this station, or perhaps you're listening on our podcast. Happy to have other programs sharing the good news about what we're doing on A Neighbor's Choice. So welcome if you've heard us on some of the great programs that we are collaborating with and working together, because podcasting is an important piece of the media revolution. Welcome if you've heard us there. Maybe you're joining us on our live streams as we start to move into enemy territory. You know, we have to go behind the enemy lines, right? And that includes social media ghettos like YouTube and Facebook. We can't leave them behind. We've got to set the captives free wherever we can find them. And that means we're going to be on traditional broadcast radio, FM and AM, or podcast, wherever you want to find us. The media environment is ready for a change. It's ready for a renaissance. And here we are, approaching sooner, closer, coming soon to a town near you is the 2020 presidential elections. Are you excited? Are you ready to select the next master of the universe? Are you ready to find out which president will be in the Oval Office when the aliens reveal themselves? This is a wonderful moment in history where you get to select who the next contestant will be when the next exciting thing happens in American and world history. This is a great time to be alive, folks. But guess what? There are problems right under our noses. There are challenges right under our noses, and we have to have the courage to think for ourselves. We have to be able to understand that politics is the problem. Politics cannot save us. And I have to demonstrate it by just illustrating the insanity of this Orwellian media. The word Orwell does not do it justice, because they were using Orwellian for everything. I mean, if you had a security camera in front of your Kmart was called Orwellian. I mean, it was getting pretty tough there for a while. That word was getting stretched out. And now it's like, when you cry wolf and then the wolf shows up, and you're not allowed to talk about Hunter Biden's sick freak pillaging of your taxpayer dollars, being a compromised agent of foreign countries, left and right, and you're not allowed to talk about it. You start to realize that you don't have a free press, do you? You don't have a free press. They have freely pressed any notion of freedom out of our society, haven't they? They've squeezed it out like one of them Cuban presses. If you live in Florida, you know what a Cuban press sandwich is, right? You know what that is. There are folks right now who think that their TV party, the TV party being the media, the old media, that somehow they have their interests in mind. I mean, think about it. Imagine being so owned by envy that you are a Biden voter who apparently believes it's okay to have an Orwellian alliance between 99% of the media, government bureaucracies, unions, government radio, universities, social media oligarchs, all of them in unison, hiding blatant, sick, nasty, compromising crimes that the Biden criminal family has engaged in, apparently. You're not allowed to talk about it. That's the kind of low-resolution corporate fascism that the Democrat Party and the media have totally joined in on. And they've been doing it for a while now, but the mask is slipping because it's so obvious now when you can't even link to a story that makes these crooks look like what they are with firsthand sources. hanging out with the Ho man himself, the spy chief of China, Hunter Biden, Jim Biden. We showed The Wire. You shared it online. You can see it on Facebook and other places. The Wire that Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother, is sending off to Dr. Ho himself, the spy chief of China. How many times are they going to hoe out America for $1? I mean, the Bidens are cheap. I mean, the thing that you learn from these leaked information is how cheap it is to own the vice president. You give him like $10, give him some gas money, take him out to dinner. The dude gives you the entire country. Sick. Come on, man. That's what Joe Biden would say. Come on, man. $10? That's all you need, Joe? $10 and a nice meal in a LA hotel lobby? Don't even get the nice restaurant. You just get the cafe sandwich. That's all it takes, Joe? Come on, man. At least Barack Obama got a movie deal out of selling out, right? He got a little series where he gets to make movies fawning over China for Netflix. Come on, man. Wear your mask, Joe. I wonder if Joe wore his mask when he was hanging out with all them disease-infested creeps making money off of the taxpayers of the United States of America. How many days do you have to wake up at 5 in the morning to get ready, to get kids to school, to brush your teeth with fluoride? How many hours do you have to spend slaving away, stooped in an office chair for Joe Biden to, come on, man, make some money off of Kazakhstan, make some money off of Ukraine, make some money off of China? Who else? Japan? Come on, man. How many hours are you going to slave away like a little ant in an ant farm doing the bidding of Queen Joe Biden and the laughing joker herself, Kamala Harris, who cackles at the thought that she gets in on the deal? Can you do that? Can you be a good, useful little worker bee so that Joe frickin' Biden and his amazing family can just make some money off of you, humiliating you, making you work 2 jobs, making you have to eat slop, Impossible burgers because you get your meat taxed under a come on man Biden presidency? He's not going to be running things. All those crazies, the corporate communists of the Democratic Party, corporate obscene profits for their billionaire friends, communist scraps, and Impossible burger goop for the rest of us. They're going to make sure they tax your steaks. Joe Biden's still going to get his steak blended up for him with gelatin so it's easy. But what are you going to get? You're going to get Impossible come on man burgers. Come on man soy burgers. Make you going to say come on man every time you bite into the next bite. That's what you want for your life? That's the kind of world you want to live in? Come on man wind farms? Come on man solar panels? Can't even get your toaster hot? We don't want a come on man world. We don't want a stupid, outdated, warmed over Keynesianism. We don't want that slop. We don't want their garbage education. They don't know how to educate. They need to get out of the way. These people don't know what nutrition is. Their garbage food pyramid system is the thing that created all the comorbidities that allowed all these people to have such lethal cases of this new virus and other viruses like the flu. Joe Biden doesn't know that. If you ask Kamala Harris, why is the food pyramid pushing people to eat PUFAs out the wazoo, polyunsaturated fatty acids? Why in the world are you shoving high fructose corn syrup down people's come on man throat? Why are you doing that? Kamala Harris, what would she say? She'd go, ha 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 ha. That's all she knows. She'd just start laughing. Because what do you do when you're doing something so sociopathic and you didn't know you're going to get tapped for the high seat that fast, all you can do is laugh all the way to the bank. You got an entire media, every state-owned, state-bent media outlet, NBC, CBS, ABC, Bloomberg, Hallmark Channel probably, OWN, Oprah Winfrey. Does she have a channel anymore? Who knows what she's doing? What are they going to do? Who wants to live in a world where you got to eat Impossible Burger goop, industrial slop goop, squeezed in? Meanwhile, you got Kamala Harris laughing every day. Every day, just laughing. All she ever did was laugh. She laughed as people were ground to powder from their disgusting system, grinding up human beings like expendable waste product. We're sick of it. We've been living in this for generations. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, they offer nothing. They are the party of cages. They're the party of bombs. That's all they've ever been. And they reveal themselves to be the monopoly of it more and more at the forefront. They had the presidency with Obama. They had the House. They had the Senate. And what did they do? They did nothing to lift a finger to let one person go with criminal justice reform. Obama admitted to doing cocaine in his biography, and he sat for 8 years on fine Egyptian cotton in the White House while Alice Marie Johnson, who we've had on the program last week, was languishing in a prison cell. Do you know how hard those beds are that Alice Marie Johnson had to lay on? Do you know how poor the nutrition is? Do you know how dehumanizing it is to be numbered as a number? While Barack Obama admits lavish cocaine indulgences, and he sits in the White House, and the bigots in the Democratic Party do nothing to lift a finger. They have her clemency year after year. And Barack Obama says, no, I did cocaine. That grandmother didn't do cocaine, but she will stay in the prison, and I will continue to get my Netflix deal off the backs of dupes all across this country. That's the come on man way of doing things. Just boring, stupid grifters, losers. That's what these people are. They are losers. It's okay to call them that. Don't let them have grandeur. They have no grandeur. There's nothing grand about allowing a grandmother to languish in prison while you did cocaine, which she didn't even do, off of her taxpayer dollars. Alice Marie Johnson has to pay taxes, which goes to the fine linens that Barack Obama and come on man Joe Biden had to lay in as they grifted. She didn't get any sheets. She didn't get any arugula. But she's free now. But the party of bombs and cages, the Democratic Party, they want vengeance. Too many people are being set free. Too many bureaucrats. I just heard about the DOJ. The DOJ is slow to let go of correcting some of the sentences with the crack versus cocaine discrepancies, the disparities in the sentences, because they're that petty. People who want power, which is what greedy bureaucrats do, they're petty. They want to hold on to every ounce of power, even over a petty thing like we locked a guy up 20 years ago, and there's a First Step Act that the Republicans led, but we don't want to allow that person to get out. We're going to fight it tooth and nail, and that's what they do. You'll find out with our next guest soon. That's what they do. They don't care. They want you to eat goop, and they want to bomb people in perpetuity because it makes $1 trillion a year in foreign policy expenditure. Too much money. They want to keep people incarcerated. They incarcerated people like General Flynn because he knew the crimes that they had committed in allowing and developing the rise of ISIS and other terrorist groups in the Middle East. I don't care what you agree. I don't care about General Flynn's foreign policy. It's not my foreign policy, but you know the difference between me and the Democratic Party? I'm a human being. I actually don't think you should be able to put people in cages for nonviolent crimes. especially bogus, made up stuff like they did with Flynn. Brought in a whole army to arrest Roger Stone. Meanwhile, they treat Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell with kid gloves. That's a come on man world we can't afford. I'm David Gronowski, A Neighbor's Choice. We'll be back in just a moment. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% with our exclusive coupon code NATE.
A loss of memory is something that you need to explore too. It's a stressful. They only represent crime. Going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
If you want to grow your savings these days, it's good to own gold. Who wants to hold dollars in a savings account earning 0.5%? Instead, check out Monetary Metals, started by my frequent guest, Keith Weiner. They put your gold to work, and you earn 2 to 4% interest, paid out not in dollars, but in more ounces of gold. Plus, there are 0 vault fees. With several active deals open right now, they're taking new clients today. Learn more at interestongold.com/David. That's interestongold.com/David. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Frankly, I don't care. They can send, if that's their best, it's Joseph R. Biden. If that's the best that the official TV party has to offer, they're going to get their clocks cleaned by the future of liberty. Their days are numbered. You cannot continue to sell people on old, outdated, microwaved, stinky Keynesianism. What is that? What in the world is that word, Keynesianism? It means nothing good. It means consumerism. It means stealth socialism. It means fascism, which is really what's going on. That's what we have today on tap by the TV party. The TV party is the crooks, like Hillary Clinton, like Obama, like the Biden crime family, all these different people pillaging their own country for $1. All Joe Biden wanted was an Egg McMuffin. That's all he needed to sell out for a country like Kazakhstan. I mean, that's what you're getting with these people. No class, no dignity, no standards, no common sense, no intellect, no philosophy, no moral compass, no character, no clue. Who in the world wants this? Who's going to line up? Please give me a Joseph R. Come on, man, Biden. Who in the heck wants this? I just don't understand it. How low info do you have to be? How desperate for a dead old God do you want? You need that so much? You want to, it's like people want to go to cages. I think there are millions of people that if Joe Biden campaigned on, I will save you from the pandemic, I'm going to open up more prisons and we're just going to lock you up in the cell and feed you socialist gruel, Impossible Burger gruel mixed in with gelatin powder. So it's like a little slop. It's like a little gel goop. And he's going to just spoon it into your mouth. They're going to have this. I think like 50 million people, at least 70 million people would vote for that. If Joe Biden campaigned on, hey, my policy is this. We are expanding our federal prisons. We're expanding the hard metal bunk beds. Everyone gets a bed, universal beds, universal home, universal slop, Impossible Burger goop. I think 60 frickin' stupid people would probably vote for it. 60 million. Is that where we're at? I mean, is that the reality of where we're at here? That he could just campaign on, we're just going to incarcerate you for the rest of your life, everybody, just because we will take care of you. We'll give you health care. We'll give you food. We'll give you 1 hour of sunshine. We'll give you a job. You'll get 10 cents an hour. You won't have to worry about where you're going to sleep. I think millions of people would vote for it. Is that where we're at? Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I think as long as it's not the other guy, we have a society today that is so bent by groupthink, they would take, their mind is so twisted, so shrunken. Like a raisin, just no juice left, no vibrancy. That they would take mass incarceration because that's what they've got with Joe Biden. Joe Biden locked up half the country for 50 years. He bombed half the universe. He bombed half of the known life force in the universe, and people are still voting for this clown. People will do whatever you tell them to do, apparently. They just do whatever they want. They just follow off a cliff. There is a certain segment of people, it appears to be, who are so owned by envy that they want to perpetuate the occupation of people of color and other folks around the world in perpetuity. There are people who want mass surveillance. They want mass food subsidy, goop, garbage food. They want to lock people up if they disagree. I mean, that's all that the Democratic Party stands for these days. They lock up political opponents. They spy on political opponents. They make up crooked judges that stop, any fairness from happening. They lock up people. They try to stop the exonerations from happening. And then if they don't lock you up, they try to drone strike you if you're overseas in a country they can make money off. And people are going to line up for this. They're going to line up for this with 7 feet distances, with the mask. And they're going to say, please, can I have 50 more years of mass incarceration? Can I have 50 more years of Joe Biden selling out our country to countries like Chinese governments for an Egg McMuffin and a senior Diet Coke? Are you kidding me? Is that the glory of the Democratic Party? Is that the glory of the TV media? This is going to be easy, folks. It's not about this election. These people are out of ammo. They got nothing to offer. We're marching forward. Back in a moment.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040 WHP.
Down to the wire in Florida, President Trump and Joe Biden getting out the vote in diverse and delegate-rich state. President Trump in Tampa sounding confident that he can take the state just like in 2016.
We're going on to win a record share of the Hispanic American vote.
But the battleground state is in play. The president losing some support due to the pandemic. Biden in South Florida telling supporters at a drive-in rally it's time for change.
It's up to you. You hold the key. If Florida goes blue, it's over. It's over.
More than 36 states seeing a surge in new coronavirus cases, and hospitals are overwhelmed in areas from El Paso, Texas, and parts of Utah and Wisconsin to Idaho and North Dakota. Zeta is on the move through the Mid-Atlantic, causing the Trump campaign to cancel its rally in North Carolina later today due to winds. The storm made landfall yesterday along the Louisiana Gulf Coast as a Category 2 hurricane. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Hello, David Gornosky here. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. And I know we're tired of having caged chicken eggs, but if we're going to have cage-free eggs, we need to have a cage-free society, which means we need to have a priority on human liberty. We need to have a priority on a pro-family criminal justice system, one that does not shred up the family for generations and say, here, have a good luck, try your best. It's not going to work. I'm David Gornosky, your host, and I'm here with my friend Chelsea Murphy of Right on Crime for Florida. How you doing, Chelsea?
Hey, David, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, and it's great to have you on again because I know that you've really been putting a big focus on doing the same kind of things and more that are happening at the federal level in the space of criminal justice reform, things like the First Step Act, things like clemencies and so forth, but you've been doing that hard at work here in our home state, Florida.
No, absolutely. And doing my best. But, I think that it's so important. From last week, we had Alice Marie Johnson on, and what a delight she was. And I think that her story is so important, not only because she was pardoned by our president and gone through all the things that she went through, but obviously talking about, what the trials and tribulations of her entire process and what she had to deal with mandatory minimums and sentencing issues and what she described it as the trial penalty. And I think that it's so important. We've got, folks just like her, Cynthia Powell, who was just released out of prison this past year. She was sentenced to 25 years for 35 pills. And so I think that talking about judicial discretion is just so important. And one of the reasons why, obviously, we're chatting again here today, I wanted to introduce our good friend, Brett Tolman, who is a former United States attorney out of Utah, and wanted to talk about his experience, as a career prosecutor, but also just kind of get his thoughts as to where he is today, what's changed his mind, and how do we get here, and what can we do here in Florida to try and chip away at our very, very archaic mandatory minimums.
Well, very good. It looks like we have former U.S. attorney from Utah turned criminal justice reformer, Brett Tolman, with us. How you doing, Brett?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for coming. And I'm glad to have Chelsea and Brett here with us because you guys work on different things, but I think we can learn some things together on this program because for me, Brett, I believe that this is an issue that we have to really take very seriously. And I want to learn your perspective as a former U.S. attorney. But for me, when I look at today's society and I look at the rage in the streets, some of it is, I believe, misplaced, and some of it is truly righteous indignation for what they believe to be a kind of corrupt justice system. And I think we're either going to fix this the easy way or the hard way. And the easy way is that we do it peacefully and we lead with culture. We lead with traditional family values. We lead with common sense, and we lead with the human person in mind. The hard way is that we continue to let it spill out into the kind of violence that we see on the streets with the rise of Antifa and other groups.
Well, you're absolutely right. And, my journey has been one in which at a young age, I became a federal prosecutor. I did that for about a decade after having served for 4 years as a chief counsel in the Senate Judiciary Committee. So I had exposure in observing how the laws were made and what we've done with our criminal justice system. And then I became a federal prosecutor, and I did that. And I'm very proud of a lot of the work that I did. But during that time frame, in both of those capacities, I learned about some of the great mistakes that have been made and some of the broken aspects of the criminal justice system. If you look at the federal code, just as an example, we have become a incarcerating and a prosecuting, a punishment only sort of country. And, I was teasing my kids the other day about the fact that, if they did any of the things I did when I was younger, that, like throwing snowballs at cars and all that kind of stuff, we never had a fear of getting prosecuted. We had a fear of getting in trouble by our parents and being grounded or having liberties taken away by our parents. But we weren't afraid that we were going to be thrown in jail or we were going to get a record at a young age. You look at the federal system, for example, when we developed our federal criminal code, we had, we had a dozen or so criminal statutes. Now, today, we have over almost 5,000 criminal federal statutes and over 300,000 regulations with criminal penalties. So what has happened is Congress every year has done this one-upmanship trying to prove that they're tougher on crime. And Democrats and Republicans have done it. And so we have created all of these statutes out there, and now prosecutors have enormous amounts of tools, to use at their discretion. And we see the development of mandatory minimums as we call for tougher and tougher sentences. And I started to notice that system was out of balance. I'm okay being tough on crime. I've prosecuted kidnappers, murderers. I've prosecuted some really bad people and are serving long sentences, and I stand by those prosecutions. But I also had some, like Marco Antonio Rivas, who, he had a bad weekend. He had no criminal history. He didn't kill anyone. He didn't injure anybody. And he was looking at 75 years mandatory in the federal criminal justice system. And that's just one of many cases that we could discuss.
Meanwhile, meanwhile, people like Jeffrey Epstein have a part-time stay in a hotel for a few months. It's amazing.
Right. Yeah, you see that imbalance. And so I got involved because I think conservatives and I think Christians and I think, anybody that cares deeply about families, we ought to be the ones that raise our voices and say, hey, let's fix some of the broken aspects of our criminal justice system.
And Brett, you're so right. And talking about how you're proud of where you came from and what you've done and who you've put away, quite frankly. And I think that is to be so commended for. My dad was a former deputy U.S. Marshal, along with an airline pilot. But to go with the law enforcement part, I have grown up respecting law enforcement and obviously still do to this day. And I think that we need them. We need to defend them, not defund them. However, I think that, unfortunately in the state of Florida, one of our biggest opponents that we've had has been law enforcement, specifically the Florida Sheriff's Association. And I respect law enforcement wholeheartedly. And I say that, I can't say that enough. But it comes to a point where, we've got all of these different lanes, and I think that we all need to stay in our own lanes. We've got law enforcement who is there on the front lines, who is there for, when an incident happens, document that, whatever it may be. Then we move on to the prosecutor, and we've got the judges. And I think that, when it comes to sentencing, when it comes to any part of, after the arrest, I think that while we respect law enforcement's opinion, I think that at that point it kind of has moved over to a different section. And so it's just fascinating to see the amount of resources that they've used to kind of push against this type of just judicial discretion, quite frankly. And we've had a lot of prosecutors here in Florida individually who have been supportive of judicial discretion, especially for first-time nonviolent offenders. And, you know, like we had Alice on last week, she faced 3 to 5 years, was her initial offer, but then took it to trial. And, you know, so sometimes I'm wondering if we should change our whole little slogan from judicial discretion to the trial penalty. But if you could just kind of talk about that and you know, where you think this is, like here in Florida, what we're dealing with, and then just kind of, I guess, separation of powers from that perspective.
Yeah. You know, I agree with you. Taking a look at sort of what a lot of the law enforcement community has sort of become, it's been fascinating to me. I will have a conversation with, you know, a police chief, for example, or a sheriff, and talk to them, ask them questions about what they think is fair, what they think is appropriate, what reform would look like that they would support, what ways that the criminal justice system could be adjusted. But it's sad to me because those individuals' voices that are reasonable and want a really good system get drowned out by the collective organizations who weigh in against any sort of change or reform. And there's this great fear that they're not going to be, you know, able to do their job, or that anybody talking about reform is going to change the system in such a way that they, you know, are going to be at risk of either losing money and resources and budget, or losing their ability to do what they do. But what is sad to me is, at an individual level, almost every person, when you talk to them, can identify areas that either need to be changed or improved. So you look at the trial penalty, just that. Very few people appreciate the fact that if you exercise your right to go to trial, you're going to get a more severe punishment than if you didn't. And you ask them if they think that's fair, and they say, well, it's a constitutionally protected, you're right. You know, you have the Sixth Amendment gives you the right to a public trial. And yet, if you exercise that, we're punishing people. I have one case right now, Chelsea, where the individual was offered 5 years if he pled guilty. He exercised his right to go to trial. He was convicted of fraud, a very large-scale mortgage fraud scheme, and he was sentenced to 835 years in federal prison. 835 is the highest sentence in a white-collar case in the history of this country. He's already served 20 years, and he's still in prison. And so I want to see more courageous people in law enforcement. My father was a peace officer in LA, was undercover for a year, investigated the Hells Angels, was there during the riots. And he was one that identified ways that policing could be improved. And I think good men and women that want to do their jobs and do them well are willing to identify those. And I'd like to give them a voice. I'm trying to do that, meeting and working with people all across the country, from Florida to California, because there is change that can be done, that can be supported. And the trial penalty is just one example of that. And so I commend what you're doing, and just the ability for people to hear that there are conservatives who want to do this, and there are ways that we can change this without, you know, crippling our law enforcement's ability to keep the public safe.
We're speaking with former federal prosecutor Brett Tolman. He was known for prosecuting the kidnapper of Elizabeth Smart, as well as several other cases. And he is telling us about his experience in criminal justice reform. And Chelsea, I wanted to kick it back to you.
Yeah, no, and you know, it's funny, Brett, you mentioned the term collective, and it's been toying with me a little bit recently on collective bargaining and kind of what we're dealing with. And while I support the right to unionize, I have a severe problem with, when I'm seeing certain associations here in Florida. And again, Brett, this is probably a little bit news to you, as it is to most of Florida. But, we have an association here that's law enforcement, and their net worth is more than the Florida Chamber and the Associated Industries of Florida. And to me, I have to take a step back and say, well, where is, if you've got 20 million in assets, you got, 14, 16 cash on hand million, where is that coming from? Not to mention the fact that they have their own unions. They have cities and counties who lobby and represent for them. And so there's this cash flow that kind of is coming through, which ends up being who is fighting our actual reform. And so I think that unfortunately for some of my friends on the left that are fighting for the same things that I am, to a different degree, we have a little bit of a heartache with that. And it's, in my opinion, I think that, our tax dollars should be there to support our local law enforcement. And I also expect that if there's excess for that should be turned back to the county in which it came from.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
For something good.
Think about we could go on for days about some of the issues and problems that these unions are making and creating. And really, if you look at the policing issue, you look at George Floyd and the tragedy that was, and how it bubbled up, I think, in many communities, all of the frustration that many communities have had with law enforcement. And yet, boil that down. Look at some of the issues and where does it really come from? I know police officers who, most of them, do not want a bad officer. Police chiefs want to be able to investigate bad conduct, and yet it is increasingly more and more difficult to hold a police officer accountable. And I'm talking about even a criminal police officer. When you look at how powerful qualified immunity has become, how powerful the unions have become, the hurdles, the ability of prosecutors, we've taken away their tools so that they aren't able to investigate and prosecute police officers. So this dialogue is something that has to absolutely happen. But we should be at a place in our country where we can identify those issues, and state and federal legislatures look to ways to fix those gaps and problems in holding police officers accountable. We give them the most power we give anybody in government, the power to take someone's liberty. And we should be able to move quickly to fix some of those problems.
We're speaking with former federal prosecutor Brett Tolman and Chelsea Murphy of Right on Crime, Florida. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm David Granosky. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. David Granosky here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. If you want to grow your savings these days, it's good to own gold. Who wants to hold dollars in a savings account earning 0.5%? Instead, check out Monetary Metals, started by my frequent guest, Keith Weiner. They put your gold to work and you earn 2 to 4% interest, paid out not in dollars, but in more ounces of gold. Plus, there are 0 vault fees. With several active deals open right now, they're taking new clients today. Learn more at interestongold.com/David. That's interestongold.com/David.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania Catania personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Hello, this is David Kronosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. A Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm your host, David Kronosky. We're broadcasting across FM and AM around the Sunshine State, worldwide on our podcast and live stream, and all of the different affiliates that we work with. Thank you for joining us. We're here with Chelsea Murphy of Right on Crime, Florida, as well as former federal prosecutor Brett Tolman, who is now a leading advocate for criminal justice reform. Brett, I wanted to ask you, I have a friend of mine. He's a former NYPD undercover detective. His name's John Beza. He's a frequent guest of the program. And, he's one of those law enforcement officials that ended up really having a kind of road to Damascus experience like Paul. He had been undercover during the crack epidemic in the 80s and so forth, and 90s and Harlem. And he saw firsthand that, trying to chase objects of desire, it wasn't working. So he almost lost his life in an undercover drug buy that went bad. And he realized, wait a second, why am I almost losing my life for something that, even if we got this done, it would pop up somewhere else in another market or neighborhood. So it was kind of a wake-up call for him. He ended up getting transferred to the Special Victims Unit. And he was shocked when he said, I never forget when he told me he had a stack of cases piled high on the desk and just a few guys working on these cases. Meanwhile, the drug war, task force had lots of money, lots of, hundreds of people, and they're going through and doing no-knock raids and all this stuff. And he said, meanwhile, I've got all these real crimes, these horrible, horrendous cases that take real tough detective work and hardly any resources and manpower to apply to those things. What do you think of that?
I agree. I saw firsthand the way in which we lost, and we clearly lost the war on drugs. We continue to try to fight it with the same tactics. I was in the trenches for about a decade. I prosecuted my fair share of drug cases. We never got, we've done some things, I think, so well, but we have really not done well dealing with the drug issue. And when we try to make strides we try to change, it's very difficult because you hit sort of exactly the problem, and that is the resources. The resources are there to prosecute and to go after drug users. We don't have a lot of ability to go up the chain, to get to the cartels, to get to the manufacturers. Almost everything is now coming through our border, our southern border, being manufactured in China, being manufactured in Mexico. Fentanyl is ravaging the country. And you sit back and you say, look, we need to be able to prosecute the dangerous individuals that choose to prey on other people, to definitely work to deter and punish those that are violent. And we have a lot of those crimes that go unsolved. My oldest sister, who I love and adore, was kidnapped and raped in college, and we never found the guys. They seemed to put very little effort, into it, and it was a tragedy that our family endured. And so it's very sensitive and real to me that we use our resources in different ways than we have in the past.
And it seems to me that to be tough on the real violent crimes means you got to start getting rid of some of the victimless crime laws, or at least, reducing the severity of these things. Because, one of our affiliates here in Tampa Bay, I remember during alcohol prohibition, I looked at the murder rate, and it was 75 murders per capita. It was almost double what Detroit is today in the drug war. And when they ended alcohol prohibition, the murder rate plummeted. It just dropped off. So you think about how these policies are manifesting the crime that we all don't want, the violence and the viciousness.
And you both couldn't be more right for a multitude of reasons. But there was one of my favorite conversations, or actually speeches I've heard, was from Newt Gingrich, and he was talking about how basically the war on drugs, how it all started. We start locking people up, and we lock up addicts, not dealers. We lock up these addicts. We go to release them. They go back to the drugs that they knew, the amount that they knew it in, and a lot of times these folks will overdose, and it turns into this whole cycle. And kind of one of the questions I wanted to bring back to you, Brett, and obviously, when prosecuting these kind of folks, you're hoping that you can get to the big bad guy, the big drug dealer, the ping king, if you will, and we end up, a lot of times not getting there. And so it almost becomes about the number of cases that we can get charged, or amount of felonies we can have and whatnot. And so it almost becomes like a quota at that point. And these folks are the ones who actually need the most help and the most resources versus the ones who are probably not doing the drugs and just selling them. And so just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that, and kind of, if I'm crazy, just to, with this quota number, or is that something that's real? What do prosecutors have to, what does that kind of landscape look like for them on the number of felonies they're supposed to do? Is there a number that they I don't know how that works.
Look, you're hitting on one of the dirty little secrets of the criminal justice system, and that is that you are incentivized to bring more cases and more serious cases, and a more serious case is one where you get longer sentences. I would receive, pats on the back and accolades and even awards while I was a federal prosecutor because I was aggressive and I did a lot of cases. And I'd get a plaque from the DEA or from the FBI based on a case that we got a really long sentence in.
And by the way, for Elizabeth Smart person, and some of those you should. I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm with you on you should for some of them. But go on.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I I agree. I'm proud of the fact that Brian David Mitchell is in prison for the rest of his life, because he would absolutely.
We're out of time, folks. We're out of time. We'll have to cut it here, and I'm sorry we just ran out of time, and we'll pick it up another time. But you're listening to A Neighbor's Choice.
Too much fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. We'll do it again, guys. Thanks, Brett Tolman.
Look forward to it.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Red